On tonight's program, Hippiejohn promises to play Mark's mission.
Don't take it down to start making changes to it yet, because I want to go grab it and play it the way it is now.
We talk about everybody's favorite topic, bugs. There's one that I've got where I've got a mission that crashes every time I close it. And we have Bazag for the first time.
Great to be here. Been looking forward to this.
Join us on the Foundry Roundtable. Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogon1701. With me is Greendragoon, who can do the Kessel run in less than 12 parsecs.
11 now.
Ah, you're improving. We have Markhawkman, who could outrun Usain Bolt as long as he had a shift key to press.
Maybe no.
And Hippiejohn, who used to fly the old Moon-Mars shuttle till he crashed it.
I'm not a pilot. I don't know why they gave me the steering wheel. And
tonight we have a longtime Foundry author and community member, Bazag.
Hello everyone, and Hippiejohn, perhaps it's why they don't have actually a steering wheel, it's buttons, so maybe that's why you crashed.
Yeah, I think it was a toy that I was playing with, and the ship just didn't respond to anything that I did, so.
Well, I'll tell you, Bazag is actually one of the first people I ever talked to about setting up this podcast. But of course, real life commitments have kept him away, and we hope to have him on quite a lot.
Yeah, it would be great to be here. Yeah, been looking forward to this.
We'd like to have a more international flavor too, as much as we can. And I'd like to start tonight with something that I don't think we mentioned previously when we were talking about the subject, but I wanted to say it real quick and move on. I know a lot of people out there are kind of not really excited about the storyline for the Romulan faction, and I wanted to mention that we have the absolute perfect tool to fix that for each individual person, because it is not difficult to make your own storyline. So, I mean, if you don't like where Cryptic's going with it, great, make your own. I mean, obviously you can't really replace the leveling content, but as far as story goes, we have that tool to make your own. And even though I personally kind of like where the storyline is going with Cryptic and with the Romulan Republic, I'd absolutely be thrilled to play what other people would see as, this is what should be the Romulan storyline.
Easy to complain. It's hard to do something about it.
I'll say this, surprisingly, based on various interviews and other things that I've heard from the devs this week, I'm far more excited about May than I was last week. Even just a week ago, I'm more excited about what's coming. So,
yes, I can't wait to get my hands on an elusive Romulan. Or a Riemann, or a Romulan Riemann hybrid, or whatever I choose to.
Well, they say that this is going to be on Tribble, by the end of the month, right?
Soon. Yeah, they said really soon that'll be on Tribble.
I'm figuring the end of the month, the last day or something.
I'm thinking within the last week of April, we'll see it.
And it probably won't be very much. I assume it'll be you can create one, you can play a few missions, but that's going to be about it, because they want to keep a lot of it under wraps, right?
I would imagine so.
Imagine that they're going to go through and test most of it.
Could be a closed beta, I suppose.
I don't know. They've released missions on Tribble in the past.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, I've actually played the new KDF tutorial mission, so obviously they put a bunch of the missions in there already.
Yeah, I think they're putting some of it up there, for sure.
Yeah, and just, flip the code switch to actually let people in it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can get into it when you're not supposed to, like Markhawkman there.
I have no idea how or why the computer did that, but it did it. So hey, I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say the thing that I heard this week that changed my mind about the way that I feel about the story is I think it was Dan Stahl who, I believe it was in the interview with Trek Radio with Stoked Radio with Mav, when he talked about players not playing bad guys. And that's just kind of a decision that they made. I think it was in that interview that he talked about it. That they're just having the players play good guys. You know, like no matter what faction you are, even if you're against the other factions, there's greater things in the universe that affect everyone. And essentially everyone is playing a good guy. And so making that decision, it makes it really understandable to me to not let us access the Romulan Star Empire, to leave them as a bad guy that we can encounter, which I think is honestly, in a way, great, because I love Romulans as bad guys. So,
well, there was a lot of logistical reasons to take that approach. I mean, mostly because they have, up till now, made the choice to have a shared in-game experience. And
which I think is great.
You have a faction that is the bad guys, they cannot share that experience. They have to have their own separate experience, which kind of
from a systems and game design standpoint, I see that what you just said completely. And from a storytelling standpoint, I see it as a really. It's just a decision to say that people are not playing the bad guys here. And I mean, some of that may be, you know, of course, driven by the fact that they want everyone involved with all the end game content. So.
Something I'd also like to think is that everyone thinks they are themselves a good guy, because I mean you're not going around trying to wreck up the universe. You're trying to achieve things that you set out to. So
I don't know. I've seen some players on the forums who really want to play the bad guy.
Yeah, but at the same time, Cryptic is making a choice, and I actually think this is a really good choice of pursuing the story of the Romulan majority, which we actually really almost never get to see.
I agree.
If you think about it, I mean, the military makes up, and the Tel Shiar make up a small section of what is the Romulan Star Empire. And there's everyone else who's basically under the thumb of those two organizations. So really, now, because of all of the turmoil, we kind of get to explore what it really does mean to be Romulan in a way that the shows and the movie could.
Yeah, because they just lack the ability to just stop and show you a day in the life of an average Romulan who wasn't part of some conspiracy to overthrow the Federation.
I mean, we see a little bit of that in Unification.
Yeah, it's the only time we really get onto the streets of Romulus. Every other time we go there, we're in the Senate, we're talking to the people who are in power, or, you know, military people, Tal Shiar, all of that. We haven't gotten to see the regular Joe Romulan citizen.
Well,
yeah, we did. We will now, though.
In Nemesis was that one where you see the Praetor Huron talking to the Romulan Senate prior to Talara setting off that device. You actually got to see, at least for a brief moment, what the Romulan Senate looked like when they were doing their regular day-to-day business. Then Talara kills them all.
That's true.
Yeah, that's sort of the hamper when you do business, death.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, moving on to what are we working on, and we'll start with our guest, Baz. What have you been working on lately?
Well, I've been quite busy recently with real life and other things. I haven't been doing a lot, but I've been have been dabbling in the Foundry. Doing a mission that I've been working on for a while that I'm calling Heroes and Villains. It's a Prime Directive story, but I think I've got a interesting twist that I don't want to quite spoil yet.
A Prime Directive story.
Now you say heroes and villains. I know that you're a big superhero, supervillain comic book fan. Is that? And I know you've talked to Zorbane about the idea of using Duratanium Man in the mission. Is this some kind of a Star Trek version of superheroes and supervillains?
Yes. Sort of my homage to Champions Online.
Awesome.
There's, the basic premise will be that you've detected a leap, like a 200-year leap in technology on this pre-warp industrialized planet, and basically you're sent there to work out what happened, why this sudden leap happened, and to determine if there's any, contamination and Klingons involved, or what's going on.
Very
I kind of remember a mission similar to that was done by. It wasn't exactly the same. But it had a similar premise that was done by what was his name? There's this one guy on the forums who has that really long thread where he gives people mission reviews.
Evil 70th.
Yeah.
Contamination.
Brian's
I think that. Yeah, I think it's contamination.
Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah.
It. I mean, it's talking about the cultural contamination aspect, but in his case, there's a very different twist on the story than the one you're doing, so it's not quite the same.
Yeah, I mean, everyone probably has their own versions of crime directive stories. I mean, every series that had their take in the TV shows, their take on the crime directive story, and I think we all have our own versions as well. So,
I think probably too many of our Foundry missions ignore it completely.
Well, one of them I noticed with his that was most interesting to me is that the twist he went on with it is that this was a case where, to a certain extent, the Prime Directive didn't actually apply. It looks like it would apply if you didn't take a close look at the situation. See, because one of the caveats to the Prime Directive is that, at least in certain situations, its directives are not used if another civilization has been manipulating the population of the planet for their own benefit.
Which is why the Federation was able to influence the Bajorans.
You guys just gave me a discussion topic for later.
The case with the Bajorans is actually kind of on a different thing, because the Bajorans were a spacefaring civilization. So
that's true, but did they actually have warp drive for Cardassians?
Yes, because they actually found the remains of a crashed Bajoran spaceship on Cardassia.
But that didn't actually have a warp drive, did it? Didn't they find some bizarre situation?
That was from hundreds and hundreds of years ago, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And so since then, I think the assumption was that they were a spacefaring people, not maybe a really widespread one, but...
Well, see,
right.
the issue the Bajorans had is that the Cardassians had blown up most of their ships. That was the biggest issue that the Bajorans had.
Yeah, they were pretty peaceful people, as I understand it. They didn't have a lot of warships or anything.
Kind of the sucky part of living only 7 light years away from Cardassia.
But I mean, the occupation was only about 50 years long, and I think before that, the Bajorans had established quite a lot of colonies, like around the Badlands area, that sort of thing.
Well, yeah, a lot of those colonies were what later became Maquis bases.
Yeah. That's great. You guys, you ask Baz what he's working on, and suddenly I have 2 conversation topics for later, totally replacing what I was going to talk about elsewise.
Hey, well, we got lots of shows coming up, so make sure you keep your other ideas.
Oh, trust me, I will.
All right, Hippie, what have you been working on?
I felt like a casting director this week. I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago, I asked people to give me some Bajorans, because I've got a Bajoran set, in the mission that it's going to be a while before it gets released, but I want to have a lot of Bajoran civilians just, populating the map on, put them on various patrols so that they're wandering around, to make some of them talking to you, and really you're only seeing it looking out a window. So I just kind of have to populate this courtyard and make it look like there's an active courtyard outside of the window. But people sent me, I think I have 50. I think I have as many costumes as I can put into the mission, unique Bajorans. Now, because of some of the limitations of the character creator, many of them look very similar. You know, the faces and the facial structures are often very similar. And I mean, yes, the character creator is really super and very, very customizable, but there is, one thing I've often seen is people say, hey, that's my clone. Because there are just things that are easy to do with the character creator. So some of the Bajorans that I'm looking at and that I'm recostuming, and some of them look the same. And so out of that 50, I'm probably going to find, 25 to 30. I'll probably find half or a little bit more that are unique that will help me populate that map. So I've just kind of felt like a casting director. I'm like, yes, you're totally usable, and putting them into something that looks like a civilian outfit or a Bajoran military that I can just put into that courtyard. But one of the reasons I'm doing this is because these are all files that people have sent me, and with what Dragoon told us about how on Tribble the import-export button for costumes has disappeared, I am making sure that every costume that I have that I want in any mission, that I'm getting the file to the proper mission so that, so that it's there, and I don't have to worry about not being able to do it later. Because I mean, I have in this 4-mission series, I have 3 NPCs that appear in 3 of them. I have one NPC that appears in 3, at least 3 missions these NPCs appear in, and I've got to make sure those costumes are where they belong. So that's really what I've been doing this week, is feeling like when I go into the Foundry, I feel like a casting director. So.
Very cool. Greendragoon, what have you been working on?
Well, for me this weekend it's been part two.
Yay!
You keeping your schedule, keeping up with the schedule?
Yeah, wait. Weekly question. So your part 2 done yet?
It is not.
It's not a weekly question.
Map 3 of part 2 has made it to the rough draft stage. Or
awesome.
Rough draft is complete.
He's very structured about how he does this. I don't assign
to be.
I love how different the people, like, just the 4 of us that are normally here, just how different the way that each of us seems to approach missions and how to make them. Like, I'll sit down and I'm not even gonna really do much except, maybe envision what a character looks like, or like look at different maps and say, hey, maybe this one will be usable, until I've got the entire story start to finish. I want to know what that impactful final scene is. Like, when I was talking about Captain Rebo's mission the other week, how the final moment of defeating that bad guy, he got me to that point where I just felt really good about that final, like, bam, I did it. I stopped the bad guy. Like, I try to plan out the whole story, and then I completely haphazardly work on putting it into the editor. I'll work on this part, I'll work on that part. Maybe today I'll do nothing but make costumes, and I can't give myself a schedule. Maybe if I could, I'd be able to release this, without thinking I have to have all of it done first.
Yeah, and that's how I normally operate. Unfortunately, 6 months later, part 2 is still not done, so I need to come up with a more structured approach.
It might go, that goes back to what I talked about, because I have 4 parts here, and part 1 doesn't really end on a cliffhanger. Part 1 is it's more like a prologue, and then 3 parts. But each of each of the following 2 episodes are going to end on a cliffhanger like that, and I don't want to leave people hanging for 6 months. I just don't. I wanted to make sure that I have it all done first. So.
I suppose I better chime in and say how I make my mission, since you've guys already told your listeners how you do yours. What I usually do is I just basically start at the beginning, create the maps, create the story along with the maps, and just, keep going until I'm happy with the map, and then move on. So then create costumes and dialogues and all that stuff as I go along.
You create it all as you go with each map?
Yeah.
Huh, interesting.
Well, I did something similar, because I plan out in my mind where the story is going to start, where it's going to go, and what the ending is going to be. But as I'm building the maps and sets for the story, I start writing in the story as I build it, and sometimes I'll end up finding a reason to change my original plan because of something that didn't work quite the same way as I was originally planning on it. Well, I mean, like, one example is with my mission, the Beta Rana incident. When I was doing the initial drafting stages for that one, the interior of the starbase, my script for that was basically beam down to the inside of the starbase, run around, do a few things, eventually find the person who's in charge of the starbase, and then talk to her. That was the extent of what I planned out ahead of time, because my initial plan, I didn't know what starbase set I was going to use, so I didn't know what sort of things I would be able to do on the map. And then, eventually I built this thing out of all sorts of pieces, and,
So you had a rough idea of what you wanted and then filled it in as you went.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, okay. Mark, what have you been working on lately?
I've been thinking of ways to improve my old mission, The Darkness Between the Stars. It was the first one I tried doing for one of the Foundry Challenge entries, and apparently it's possible that it may have come out the best of the three. I'm not entirely sure about that one. I don't know. Anyways, though, one thing that I was thinking about doing with it was the mission isn't scripted to have a bad guy. So one thing I was thinking of doing was putting in a group of non-villainous antagonists that you're kind of competing with to scavenge the remains of that spaceship that you find when you go there.
Okay, so here's a storytelling question. If the way that you have it scripted doesn't have a villain, does it have some sort of antagonist? And if it doesn't, what is the driving force for the protagonist, ostensibly the player character?
Well,
I think that would be the question to ask.
In the original version of it, it was a simple exploration mission. You are sent there by Starfleet Command because they've detected some sort of unknown vessel, and they need to have someone go there in person and find out what they can about this ship that's been detected drifting derelict in space. So you go there, you do stuff, the ship almost fries your crew, and then you go home and file a report.
So it's more of a you have a problem to solve kind of a mission rather than something to fight.
Well, I was going to say that from a storytelling perspective, you do have a quote unquote villain or antagonist or driving force,
Villain doesn't have
which
to be a
is
person.
Yeah, the villain, the quote unquote villain doesn't have to be a person. It can be, there's this, the mystery is the villain because that is the driving force for the protagonist to solve that.
I'm going back to one of my first missions, Starfleet Experimentation. It's a non-combat mission, but, there is very much a villain in the sense that your ship is in danger if you don't figure out how to solve this problem.
If your ship or your crew are in danger, you have a villain. And what you said, Mark, was, when they're aboard the thing. Yeah, the problem, the idea that the ship they're investigating nearly fries the command crew.
Well, see, that particular twist to the plot, though, it's you making a discovery that causes your ship to almost get fried. It's because, here's the thing. Part of
it doesn't need to be the thing is that it doesn't need to be the ship attacking your people. It can simply be they make a discovery, they press a button, and things happen that are terrible. That's a quote unquote villain. That's an antagonist. That's a big problem for them to solve in a forward moving thing. I don't know that you need to script in other necessarily factions. It's just that's all.
Man versus man is only one of the types of conflict.
Anyway, the way I originally scripted it, I wrote it so that you're there to figure out what happened to the ship and why it's derelict, and also whether or not, it's salvageable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then when you get there, you figure out that the ship has actually been drifting through deep space for a lot longer than Federation command thought, and two, that you figure out what killed the crew of the ship, and narrowly escape having the same thing happen to you.
So really, it's a man versus situation.
Yeah, we've definitely seen a lot of that in Star Trek over the years.
Absolutely, man versus situation is just fine. I haven't played the mission. And now I'm going to, because now I want to be able to comment on it better. And now that, but just from what you're saying, I feel like, because you mentioned maybe adding in another group of, someone trying to investigate it or something there when you started talking about this. And I'm feeling like, just from what you're saying, man versus situation here is fine. Like the situation and the problem and the quote unquote villain can come from just the situation and the investigation and the mystery, and everything that you have described can be your antagonist and your forward driving force.
Well, see, this is part of the reason why I decided that I wasn't going to put in a villain, and rather I was going to put in a non-villainous antagonist for this part. And, you did the Beta Rana incident mission I did. Well, two of the Boslick costumes that I used in that one were actually created for that role there. I was actually originally, that's the reason why I started making the Boslick costumes. I was going to use a group of Boslicks for this.
Well, I'll say this. Is it still up on holodeck at this point in time?
The
mission?
Stars? Yes. I think.
Okay, then don't take it down to start making changes to it yet, because I want to go grab it and play it the way it is now.
Well,
if you throw in another antagonist, cool, I'll play it again and see how it works out. But I want to check out this man versus situation aspect of things.
Hold on. I need to explain one thing quick. Before the fifth Foundry challenge, in the space between the fourth and the fifth one, I actually did start doing a few things to do that, but I think I may accidentally have published a version that had a few small aspects of this in it, but didn't have the actual written in.
We'll see. I'm going to go grab it when we're done recording. So
if I remember,
get it into my mission journal.
Of what made it into the published version of the mission is when you go on the first map, you'll see this freighter just kind of floating there in space. I don't remember if I scripted in anything for it to actually do. I think it just sits there with no obvious reason for being there. When you go to the ship interior map, if you look around, you'll notice this Boslick woman standing on top of one of the ship's warp plasma conduit, scanning the ship's equipment. I don't think I put in any dialogue for her, so you just kind of like walk in the room and she's just kind of there.
Well, we'll have to see what Hippie thinks next time and see what you...
I am going to go grab it right as soon as we're done recording.
Because going back and getting it and changing an old mission is sort of a difficult thing, because you want to put some new stuff into it, but, at the end of the day, you don't want to make it worse, right?
Right. You want to put some new stuff into it, but I think it may be better oftentimes to just expand on what already works.
Rather than introducing a whole lot of new
introducing a whole new element. Like, really fine tune the thing about something that works rather than introduce a new element. I mean, I'll see. Like I said, I'm gonna go play it. I'll let you know either next week or, in my review.
Well, I have been working on, actually, first of all, I fixed a bug in my, the mission that I had put out for the last challenge, Land of Hope and Glory. I had this spot where, you were boarded by Tholians, and then you did a reverse boarding action where you went onto their ship, and the mobs were jumping around and would teleport up to above the ceiling, and it made it almost
and your bridge officers
really annoying. Too. So I fixed that now.
Cool.
It's
Do you
not.
know how
it's
my
not quite-
how my tune finished that?
It is not
My
quite
bridge
as cool as it
officers and
was.
the Tholians disappeared into the ceiling and fought it out while I stood down below and just hoped that my people won.
Because of course the combat was not part of an objective. So
Right.
you could still finish the mission, but I kind of had an inkling of how to fix it, which was to make the floor and the ceiling, which had been set to appear and disappear based on triggers, I made them constant. They don't appear or disappear anymore.
Yeah, you
Okay.
kind of need your floor to always be there.
Yeah. Which makes it
Yeah.
a little bit less cool because you can see those outside the window, but I figured, better gameplay than that, so.
I am kind of wondering, it's like, why did you feel the need to have a window that you can look out of at that location?
Because I thought it was really cool because you go by that window and I know a lot of people run around and look at things. So I thought, how cool would it be if you can see space outside that window? Empty space.
One thing that I noticed when I played that mission is that I was able to figure out how to crawl out through the window and walk around.
Yeah, I also fixed that.
I
should realize that the first thing everybody will do when they see a window is jump out of it. That's why a lot of times when I like to build sky castles, I like to build custom maps way up in the air. And so a lot of the times if I have an opening, I will either seal it off with an invisible wall, as I did in this case, or I will allow people to jump out of it. When they hit the ground, Hippie, you've seen me do this. When they hit the ground, there's a little NPC called QQ who will make fun of you and then spawn a whole bunch of targets to kill you so that you respawn back up where you're supposed to be.
Now that I have my full Mako set on my Federation tune and my full
you
honor
almost
guard
beat them last time. So
and my
I
full
gotta add some
honor
more
guard
targets.
set on my, I'm gonna try that again with a full set of great gear, and I'm gonna try to fall down and kill all your targs.
Well, you realize, of course, that you won't be able to get back to the rest of the map if you do.
Yeah, I know. I just want to see if I can do it. I played the mission.
Yeah, just beam back to your ship and then beam down to the planet and start off the whole thing all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is a danger because, oh god, it was so funny. It was way back
It's like
right after season 4 where I had just finished a mission, was taking some people through for playtesting, and the first thing somebody did was jump out a window and had no way to get back. Lesson learned.
I've done that a number of times.
Yep.
So I got an odd question for you, loosely related on this. How many captain mobs does it take to more or less guarantee that the player will be killed?
I would recommend.
I put as many as I can.
Okay, so I was not geared up super well, and what happened when I hit the ground was that I had I think I had like maybe 3 hit points or, health points left.
It doesn't
when I
take
hit
down
the
shields though.
No, it doesn't take down my shields. And I walked over to this guy and I was like, wait a minute, Drogon told me about this. There's going to be horrible monsters. So I just used my hypos, got myself back up, got my crew standing up.
You prepared for it.
Yes, of course I did.
You're not supposed to prepare for it.
I was like, there's going to be horrible monsters everywhere. I got my crew set up. I had my engineer put up, phaser turrets and mortars and everything else. And then I talked to him and a bunch of targs appeared and then a bunch of targs died. And one by
I better
one.
go add some more then.
one by one.
I think I was a little
died.
hamstrung on that one because I had used a lot of friendly mobs.
Yeah, up top
for
there.
NPCs up top for just random people wandering around. So I only had a little bit left to get to the cap, so. But
I mean, I had to try is what it is, So.
But I've also been working on the mission that I had you guys help me brainstorm for last week. And with your help, I got some really good ideas, and I have a direction that I'm going, and I think it's going to be pretty cool. I've got a couple of maps that I've started building and started scripting, so that one's coming right along.
Awesome.
And the aim is to get it out hopefully before the Romulans drop, or at the very least before we can start making Romulan missions.
I just thought of something while you were talking about that it's something that I noticed a long time ago in the Foundry, that added, possibly accidentally in one of the updates, that I've never attempted to work into a mission, but I've always been kind of curious about. One thing I realized is that it's actually possible to set enemy mobs to have default dialogue, or at least it used to be. I haven't checked recently.
You still can, I think.
Yeah, it's a dialogue to do when they enter battle, right?
Yeah.
No, that's default text. Default text, it pops up above their heads and stuff, but if I remember, you can actually set default dialogue, which is weird.
You'd never be able to set it off.
You'd never be able to see it.
You could actually walk up to one of them and attempt to talk to them in the fight. I think I may have actually at least attempted to set something to do that.
Or in like the half second before they aggro and start shooting you.
Yeah, I'm thinking I can't see how you would ever.
I'm not sure why you would want to use that.
Yeah.
But okay.
Now that I'm thinking about it some more, you might be able to put that in as like an optional objective. It's like you get up close to one of the enemies and like do like this pickpocket thing on them or something before you shoot them. And
that could be if it exists, and I mean, I know that default text exists and that, they have something they can say, before they go into combat or while they're doing stuff, because, I'm thinking of Kirkbat's zombie mission where they were all like, when they were eating something, they were all like groaning and you could see the dialogue above them. And I know that's default text. But maybe if default dialogue exists on enemies, I don't know. I certainly haven't seen it, that I know of. I'm gonna look later now because it sounds kind of neat because you could use it for a stealth mission if it exists. You could put an optional objective in for tactical officers with stealth kits.
Actually, there's a problem with that because, talking to a contact breaks the stealth.
Right, but it would allow you to get close enough to initiate the dialogue.
You can work that in where it's supposed to do that,
Right.
You tell them to try and pickpocket, but of course they're supposed to fail.
Yeah, you pickpocket or whatever it is. But
you could give it an instant activation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's true.
Anyway, let's move on to mission reviews. And I'll start off. I've got one. I played Broken Mirror by Radkip. It's a mission that it's fairly new. He posted about it on the forums. He only had about, I think, 11 plays when I played it. As you might expect, it's a mirror universe mission. I like the mirror universe, so that's why I decided to go and play it. I think he really took a lot of inspiration from the Temporal Ambassador episode that Cryptic just put out. Because a lot of it is similar to that. You go and you engage some people and then you wake up in the mirror universe. Your ship is gone. You're supposedly serving the Tholians, although you don't have any memory loss. It's not a time thing. It's just you got transported over to the mirror universe. And then the rest of the plot is you trying to gather up these mirror characters and retake your ship. Now, one of the things I really like that he did is he put a lot of effort into background information about where the mirror universe is in the Star Trek Online timeline. And he has posited that the Dominion has made contact with the Alpha Quadrant races and has essentially conquered everybody. Because, there was no Starfleet things didn't play out the way they did in our universe.
Mm-hmm.
The Dominion won. The Tholians are one of their sort of lackey races. They are in charge of this particular area of space where you're at. And so you have to take your ship back from the Tholians. And it ends on a cliffhanger, a Green Dragoon style cliffhanger. But, I thought it was a good little mission, and I would definitely like to play the next part. I think it's somebody who's got a good feel for the Foundry, somebody who has done a lot of effort with starting to do custom builds, especially space maps.
Awesome.
His space maps look really excellent.
Cool.
So I'd recommend you guys go play that one. Right?
Sounds like a fun premise.
Yeah. I like a good mirror universe mission.
So do I.
Yeah.
My own is still my favorite of all my missions that I've made.
I love a good mirror universe mission. I don't have any mirror universe stories in me, I don't think.
I think the best way to do it is to make the mirror universe mission about mirror universe versions of characters from your other missions.
That might work. My issue is like any mirror universe story to me, in my mind, when I start to try to tell it, I want the player character to try to talk to his engineer or to try to talk to, important people in their crew and to have it not like the original series mirror universe is what inspires me.
You'd like them to talk to mirror versions of their bridge officers.
Yes,
things like
exactly.
that. Yeah, and I kind of had to get around that in mind by making your first officer an original character.
Yeah.
That you interact with on your counterpart's ship, because you infiltrate your counterpart's ship in my mission.
Hmm.
So the first officer of that ship is actually a character, a mirror counterpart of a character in a couple of my other missions.
Yeah, maybe I'll figure it out. It's just as long as there keep being cool mirror universe episodes to play, then I'll be happy. So this is another one for me to go play.
It definitely brings some challenges, especially because you can't really interact well with your own counterpart. People want to see the mirror versions of themselves.
They do.
That's something you can't do.
We need that Foundry tech.
Here's a potential solution. We have our tunes and our stories existing in a world that's pretty full of NPCs that are kind of neat. What is the mirror version of Admiral Quinn like? What is the mirror version of Sulu like? What is the mirror version
where
of
is the mirror universe version of Sulu?
Yeah.
It'd be in a completely different place.
Yep.
Maybe everyone always knows where he is. It's like a broadcaster general announcement everywhere throughout the galaxy.
Can we call the mission Where's Sulu?
That might be the way I would approach it, is to look at the NPCs that I really like.
Yeah.
And even some of the ones that died during the storyline. Like, you know what? I liked Karu Khan. It may have been not my very favorite featured episode series, but I liked Karu Khan.
I did not.
See, I liked him.
I think he acted like no Jem'Hadar would ever act.
I do too, and that's why I liked him.
Okay.
Yeah,
fair enough.
I did that in a few of the DS9 episodes, though.
Oh yeah, they definitely did.
One of the DS9 episodes, you had a situation where the Vorta, who was in charge of this group of the Jem'Hadar, gave the box that had the Ketracel White in it to Cisco because of the fact that he thought his Jem'Hadar were going to betray him and take it from him.
Yeah, as one line said, the Founder's control over the Jem'Hadar have been slightly exaggerated.
Yeah.
I mean, I got the example of Weyoun and his that one botched copy that was sympathetic to Odo.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe they got the genetic mix for Karu Khan a little bit wrong.
Yeah, so from my point of view, is like, what is the mirror version of that character like? What is the mirror version of Admiral Tanay like? What is the mirror? That might be the only approach I would take.
That's the only problem I would say with this mission, is that he had created this history of, a recent history of the mirror universe that included the Dominion, but we didn't see the Dominion much in the present day, in the mission itself. And hopefully he will, I really hope he explores that in the next few, is what is the mirror Dominion like?
Mm-hmm.
Are they the same? Are they different?
They're like our Federation.
We shall see.
You know what story I would love to see? One question that occurs to me is, what are the mirror universe Borg like? I think they're the exact same. Yeah, I think they're exactly the same as they are here.
It's funny because people think the mirror universe automatically means everybody is mirror.
Is everybody
but
different?
I don't think it should.
I think the Borg would be exactly like they are here, and I would love to see a mission dealing with how does the Terran Empire and whatever remains of the Klingon-Cardassian alliance from, how does the mirror universe deal with the Borg?
Okay,
I think that
mission
would be
idea,
fun.
everybody.
Somebody grab that and run with it.
Not
I
not
see
your
it
Green
coming
Dragoon,
to
you
the-
already have enough work to do.
Yes, unspoken for.
I hope we have listeners, maybe one of them will do it.
Well,
Please, I want to play that mission.
I
How does
put it up
the
Foundry,
universe do?
and I'm actually looking around, and I found that there actually is an option that you can set for enemy groups called chat.
Yeah,
I
it just
don't know-
makes them say things randomly.
That's all it does?
That's all it does. Yep. And then you can set the weight to say how often the little chat bubble will appear above them.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's no default dialogue for enemy groups.
All right, well, Hippie, you got a mission for us tonight, or two?
Yeah, I've got a mission. I played a really old one, apparently. Found that out. I found out exactly how old it is before the show. It goes back to, I guess, probably, 2-3 years back when the Foundry was first getting started. I said last time.
I know which one you're talking about. You'll
Yeah.
get to that in a second, but I believe it was on Tribble, and he copied
It was on
over.
Tribble, and then great, so, like I said last week, I'm starting to play, and I've already played a lot of them, and what I'll do is I'll go back and replay them so that I get them fresh in my mind. The Klingon Spotlight missions, because I've got to admit, most of the time that I spend in the game, and unless they put something out there like the Crystaline, creature event, that I want to get that 50,000 dilithium, so I'll go do that on my Federation tune, but most of the time I spend in game, I spend playing Klingon, so I want to go ahead and play all the Spotlight missions on the Klingon side, and I'll go ahead and give my review of all the ones that I play and replay, and I played the first part of Havraha's Time the Enemy, Time the Traitor, Time the Ally series, and it was Time the Enemy, and I really enjoyed it. It was a whole lot of fun. It's exactly the kind of story that I really like. I love time travel stories. They're one of my favorite things. Always have been. When I run tabletop role-playing games, I try to find ways to make time travel stories happen in some way. Now, the story was really, really just super. A lot of fun, a great time travel story that's one of those interesting approaches to time travel. It's entering into a bubble of time that moves at a different pace, kind of a story, so that when you exit the mission, more time has passed than had passed for you inside of the mission. So that's really a great, very interesting way to use time travel, in my opinion. There were little things about the mission that bothered me. But some of it, I think, was just, like you say, it was on Tribble and ported over, and the Foundry was a lot older, and there were a lot of things, I guess, that it couldn't do at the time. So a lot of the things that probably were, that actually bothered me in some way at all were limitations, I think, of the Foundry, not because he couldn't have made them better if he had a better tool, kind of thing. So the story really caught me right away, and I broke it when I was looking at it. I thought of it in that 5-act storytelling kind of thing we were talking about, where you've got the exposition, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the denouement of a story, and it's all there, and it's all there, and because you know that it's the first part of a trilogy, the end feels really succinct, very complete. The mission could be, and this is an approach to, making a series that I kind of really like, because this is episode 1 of a series, and I feel like I've done a mission, it had a beginning, a middle, and an end, and great. And it's all there. That's a great way to tell a story. the story caught me. The first opening dialogue contained all of the exposition, which was both appreciated and annoying. The Klingon general who gives me the mission at the beginning of the mission gave me everything I needed to know to go get started. I loved that. I didn't have to go search for the information elsewhere, and the problem was that it was a Klingon general giving me this information, and at times it felt like I was being briefed by a historian who, and maybe he was a Klingon general with a large interest in history. It felt a little bit too packed. And I myself am guilty of writing too much sometimes. Often, in fact, I go back over my writing and say, how do I trim this down? And, it just was a lot at the beginning. So like I say, it was appreciated and slightly annoying, but that got me right into the mission, which took me right to this space system of an alien species, and getting into the map. There's some space fights that I suggest playing this mission on at least advanced mode, if not elite, because the fights are really, really easy. At least for the build that I have with my tune. The fights were really easy, and the second time I went back and played it, I did switch it to elite so that I could have more fun with the mission, and I did have more fun with the mission, playing it with the fights on elite. And the first space map is hit the one thing that there was only the one thing that super just kept, by the end of the mission it made me say, green sparkle pony go. Is he uses one of the effects that we have in the Foundry. It's this kind of green popping fireworky sparkly effect. And it's all over space. And it's cool. And I'm not sure if he layered it and made a lot of it happening around space, or if the effect is really just that overwhelming and I didn't remember that it's that overwhelming. But it was distracting in the first in that map a little bit.
The space radiation effect.
Yes. I'm sure it's a radiation effect. It's the green poppy, fireworky, sparkly effect.
I remember how effects work is that if you simply duplicate the effect.
Right. I know that, and I don't know if that's what he did, or I don't know if the effect. Regardless, it was a little overwhelming. And then when I beamed down to the planet, the effect was still there. And I was like, okay, so the whole system is, everything is going to have this green sparkle effect. And the planet map looked nice. The space map, everything looked really nice. And once I got deeper into the mission, as I said, by the time that I hit the last map and it was still sparkling green at me, I literally was like, green sparkle pony go. But that was just me having fun with it. I really enjoyed the mission. The story is absolutely superb. It's a really old mission. I don't feel like I'm going to be giving any spoilers to anyone when I say, hey, it's a Klingon mission. Guess who's the bad guys are? It's Starfleet. And that was great. Like, I didn't expect it. The way the mission unfolded up until the point that I find out that Starfleet is the bad guy in all of this, I was just like, wow, this is great. It was almost a complete shock. Actually, the first time I ran through it, it was a complete shock that Starfleet was the bad guy in the entire situation. And that was super. And the whole mission, the story is just absolutely wonderful. And there's one character that appears at the end that when she appeared, I was absolutely not surprised. I didn't see the character coming and what her point was in the story coming, but I wasn't surprised at the race of the character and the appearance of the character, it's a Havraha mission. Rigelian appears. Wow. But no, I mean, when I saw that, I was like, wow. But he uses that character to introduce what to me is one of the most fun puzzles that I have done in a Foundry mission.
Is that Helma?
He basically duplicates the whole code breaking. Do you remember in the one Romulan mission where you pick up the Tel'Shar coded transmission and it's all kind of gobbledygook and you end up replacing words and it unlocks and things? He does a version of that where you have to unlock a code by doing word replacement and opening up a little bit at a time. And, based on knowing how old it is and knowing what the limitations of the Foundry were at the time, it is such a wonderfully done puzzle. Probably my favorite puzzle that I've run into in the Foundry, quite honestly. It was brilliant is what I can say. It a little bit too easy to just do the clicky through it. But
that's tough to
really
avoid.
That's tough.
Yeah,
exactly. Really, how can you avoid that is what I was going to say.
Bazag
really,
could probably tell us that. He's big into making puzzles.
Yeah, is really how can you avoid that? How can you avoid just having them be able to go back and click whatever button, because eventually you've got to let them out of that dialogue or let them out of whatever. So, but if you follow it and play the puzzle the way it's supposed to be played, it is such a fun puzzle. For being as old of a mission as it is, really there were other things that I was, that I was, when I was playing it, I was like, I wonder what this is. And, but when I look at it and I think of how old the mission is, I realize that these were just limitations that the Foundry had at the time. And I can completely ignore, little things, because there were probably less assets to use back then. There were less, I know you guys couldn't really do branching dialogue for a really long time. So
I think by then, and certainly by the time that it launched on holodeck when we were all copying a few missions over, then we definitely we did have branching dialogue. But you're right, there were fewer assets.
There were fewer assets. And so I guess since I'm going to be looking, I think probably for the foreseeable future, I'm going to just be looking at spotlight missions because I really like playing them and they give me a lot of dilithium in a day, and it's fun to talk about missions that are really good. Missions are spotlights for a reason, and there are a lot of people, I've seen some comments recently. I don't frequent the forums, but when I do go there, I look at a lot of things, and I've seen some comments. People are like, well, I don't want to play. I know they give a lot of dilithium, but I don't want to play these spotlight missions because I feel like they're going to be really, really long. Time the Enemy took me 45 minutes tops to complete, and that's because I'm the kind of player that stops and looks at everything and tries to bleed out every last bit of dialogue that I can find. And so my review of Time the Enemy is just simply, thumbs up. This is a great mission, and I am really looking forward. I don't know exactly when I'm going to get to the next two in the series, but I'm really looking forward to playing them. And yeah, that's the mission that I would, say that I played. I played it in the past, and I played it again recently in order to, have it more fresh in my mind to talk about. So.
All right, Greendragoon, what have you been playing?
Well, I actually played a mission called, make sure I get this right, Finding Lascaux.
Ooh.
By Gulberat. And this started, as many things do, in the Starbase UGC chat, talking to Hippiejohn. And I can't remember what the conversation was up to that point, but I made the comment that what if the Packleds don't speak ineloquently? It's just that the universal translator is completely incapable of picking up their, or interpreting their language properly. So it comes out sounding like simple. And so he pointed me to this mission. And as you can guess from that lead-in, it is about the Packleds, who they are, or who they are really, who they were. it's definitely an interesting mission. It's one of the higher rated missions, and its rating is well deserved. This was actually the first of 2 parts, and while it doesn't cliffhanger or anything, it does end with the strong intention that this continues forward to finish it off. Mm-hmm. It basically centers around you being sent into Cardassia to basically find out about the origins of the Packlids. It seems that the Cardassians have managed to basically open up formal diplomatic relations with the Packlids, and they've managed to do this because one of their engineers discovered that while the Packlid communications linguistic skills are very primitive, their visual processing abilities are extremely high, and discovered that, in fact, Packlids could pick up sign language far more quickly. And this kind of ended up being the key to them developing a proper and developed language. So the mission is, you're coordinating with the Cardassians, and the mission is basically you're looking into the origins of the Packlids. How in the world did they get to be where they were? And kind of looking into where did they come from, trying to solve the mystery behind it. It's got a couple of bits of side plot, but for the most part, you're first trying to piece together where you think the Packlids originally came from. They themselves don't have a properly recorded history, so you don't have many details from them beyond, say, 200 years. But it kind of ends up leading you to the Brateca Nebula, and where you find the remains of a Packlid ship there, which you investigate. And a lot of the lines, and I'm tiptoeing delicately to not give anything away, find out about who it was and basically who turned the Packlids out onto the universe, where they came from. It doesn't proceed far enough where you actually find like a Packlid homeworld or anything. There's also some a smaller plot that is kind of involves what you find on this derelict Packlid ship, but I don't want to get into that. It's a very, very, very dialogue-heavy mission, and the author warns ahead of time about this. It's a very, very heavy dialogue mission that's also about an hour to an hour and a half long. Yeah. So it is a lot of reading. And in its good dialogue, it is just very exposition-heavy. It's a lot of explaining things, a lot of going into detail. He did something interesting where he actually would stick in alternate prompts based on if you happen to be a certain species. So, for instance, if you happen to yourself be a Packlid captain, or you were a Bajoran, or something like that. I think you even saw one that you could select if you had a Packlid bridge officer.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. I said very, very good, very well written mission. It's the equivalent of like 4 scenes of the TNG crew in the conference room worth of exposition. That said, it's very interesting. It makes some very interesting assertions about the history of the Packlids, which is kind of something we don't know much about. It'll be kind of interesting to continue this and see where they take it.
Yeah, I have to say, that's something I always wondered about in The Next Generation is the Packlids were apparently a warp-capable civilization. Obviously, they must have had some sort of skills if they were able to build and maintain their own starship.
Well, that was kind of what this mission was getting at, is that certain discontinuity between the fact that they were traveling around in these warp-capable ships, yet at the same time barely had the technical knowledge to even keep them running.
Right.
Well, sounds good. Mark, have you been playing any missions recently?
Not many. I've been kind of busy lately. But a large part of that has been thrashing the crud out of the Crystaline Entity repeatedly, but
been enjoying that?
Yes, actually, doing that one is a lot more fun than the old version.
Mm-hmm.
Although I have to say, the seemingly endless swarm of Tholian ships gets annoying after a while. I mean, seriously, you could have one team of 5 people doing just massacring Tholians, and another team of 5 people smashing the Crystaline Entity, and the mission would proceed reasonably smoothly.
Wow, I'm having entirely the opposite experience with this Crystaline catastrophe event. Oh, I don't like it at all.
It goes to show you can't please everybody.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, remember what I said last week is I don't have to be the audience for everything. I really don't. I mean, yeah. I'm having exactly the opposite experience with it. It's no fun.
Do you not like it because it's hard to, or you're having a hard time beating it, or do you not like it because...
No, not at all. I literally feel like I could do it in my sleep. It's way too easy. They took something that was reputed, legendary almost, for being the hardest event, the hardest, thing to do.
There was only one thing that really made the old Crystaline Entity hard. Only
Exactly. If you got a good team, if you all sat down beforehand and, you got into a chat and you said, okay, this is what we do, this is how it works, everyone look it up, so that when we pop in there, we're not going, what's going on? Hey, don't do this. That's why it failed 100,000 times. The 2 times that I did it, I went in once and had that happen and I was like, oh, this is terrible. And then I saw someone who said, hey, let's all sit down, find out the real information, and we took a group in, and man, it didn't take us any time at all. And this new one is just way, way too easy. And it has absolutely no story to it whatsoever.
Did the first one have any story to it?
No.
No. Not really.
I don't think it ever did.
None of, you know what?
It was just floating around there, just attacking folks.
Yeah, you're right. None of these events really have.
We found another one and we wanted to die. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, none of them.
Death to all crystals.
Yeah, none of these.
Your problem, Hippiejohn, is that you have not tried to communicate with it.
Okay, so do you want to? I have 4 tunes that are capable of doing the event. I'm doing it with one of them. And I'm only doing it with that tune because, 1, I want all of that crazy dilithium. I should be doing it with all of my tunes, but I don't like it enough that I'm only doing it with one. And the other reason is because I want the cool little non-combat pet that flies around behind me that is a little crystal. Because then I can pretend like I made peace with it. That's kind of what it is. I can pretend like I didn't just go in and destroy it 10,000 times.
You tried setting up a harmonic resonance through the main deflector.
I would if that were an option, but it seems my only real option is just to, blast.
No, that's the secret option. You gotta find it.
Terry still hasn't found it yet.
Yeah.
I keep thinking about telling her, but I just don't want to spoil the surprise.
But play a nebula and see if you can get 3 grav wells open at the same time on top of it.
All right, Bazag, have you been playing any Foundry missions lately?
Yes, well, I've played 2. Well, actually, 1 and a teaser. The one was a radio blast from the past by Telatheus, and but the story is you're going to you're looking for a derelict. There's something going on near Drazana or K7? I can't remember which one. One of those. And there's a ship there that suddenly appeared, and you're in an asteroid belt, and you've got to go investigate. That ship's sent out a distress signal, but it's like a really old ancient distress signal from the days of Toths. I wonder what would happen. So anyway, you get there, you get the distress signal, find it, you discover that there's a ship that went missing like 150 years ago. It was presumed destroyed, and you now get to find out what happened to it. The only problem is you actually get transported back in time through a crazy happenstance, and what happened to it might as well happen to you. So yes, as you get there, there's a bit of confusing. I'm a Starfleet officer. No, you're not. You got a weird ship and stupid clothes, and there's no record of you. So which leads to one thing which your captain just willingly says, yeah, I'll become a prisoner. He like willingly beams over to the other ship and to be arrested for impersonating a Starfleet officer, which I thought was a bit weird, but it becomes really crucial. So it's a TOS set interior with TOS, costumes everywhere. The guy's done even though there's, the sets are all decked out anyway, there's a few items that he's placed in with the new, TOS stuff that Zero's had recently put in that, it's not too crowded, which is an easy thing to do with the TOS set. I won't go into too many, but there's too much detail about the actual plot, but, basically there's some research going on and on the nearby planet that wasn't there 150 years ago, in the future when you actually arrived there. And there's some people that aren't quite happy about what's going on there. But in true TOS fashion, it all ends up being resolved. So, I really enjoyed this mission. The captain was good, and there's this, suppose first officer that I really liked as well, that you and the captain been down to the planet and this first officer takes over, and he doesn't seem to be, he doesn't really like it because he thinks he's not good enough. So I really enjoyed that one. A good time travel one.
Ooh.
Sounds good. All right, moving on.
Oh, wait,
you had another one. Sorry, go ahead.
As I said, it was more of a teaser than anything. It's, In a Mirror Lightly, part 1 by, Wolfpack 12C. It's only, it's a short 5-minute test. That's what he says of the story. And this one really, even though it was only 5 minutes, it really, brought me in. The basic premise is that you've received some instructions to write, a text in orders. You haven't, to go to a set of coordinates, and, some weird, strange things happen, like, your computer system is hacked by Starfleet and things are done. So, it sets it up to be a really great mystery to begin with. And, as you go, you start to explore. Some ships blow up when you get near them, and you discover that your captain is actually a mirror universe agent that has infiltrated the Prime universe. So that is really unusual. But I really enjoyed it. It came completely out of nowhere. And there's some, as soon as you discover that, there's some, quote unquote Starfleet ships that turn up, but they're actually mirror universe ships, just because you can't make normal, Starfleet ships your enemy.
Not quite.
Turn up and start attacking you. And that's pretty much where it ends, with, one of your bridge officers going, "Oh no, we just killed all those Starfleet ships. What's going on?" And that's it. It only was really one map, but, it was a space map, but, it looked really well done. A lot of layering. My only critique is that perhaps the background was perhaps a bit too busy. There was a lot of light and stuff going on in the background, but the actual objects in the map didn't have very much light at all. So that's my only one criticism, and I am really hooked. I want to see how this plays out.
Excellent. Okay, now moving on. To discussion topics, and I said last time that we were going to talk a little bit about bugs. So I thought I'd ask you guys if there were any particular bugs that you find really annoying, or that you really like and you hope that they never fix. So I'll just throw that out there.
I think I can start off this one. A bug I would like to never be seen fixed is, of course, the costume import bug. Unless, of course, they gave us a completely unrestricted NPC costume editor. But
that
until
would be
they
the
do
preferable
that,
fix, but
settle for the bug. The most annoying bug that I find is probably the NPC pathing issue in preview. That probably has the biggest issue, or causes me the biggest issues.
Mm-hmm. There's one that I've got where I've got a mission that crashes every time I close it in the editor.
That's a side effect of those custom NPCs, those bugged custom NPCs.
Is it really?
Yeah. So if you, for instance, have one of those invisible or one of those ones that were not imported properly because you chose a animal or something, it'll crash your client on close. It'll stop as soon as you delete the errant costume, but it's an unfortunate side effect.
Good information to get out to the people.
Well, in the Beta Rana incident, I did several NPCs where I used a ship skin on a ground character, and I never had a single issue like that. But it might be only a specific combination that does that. I don't know.
Yeah, the only thing I've really know for sure that it causes that is the invisible NPC trick.
And I think that was the mission that I had loaded up to test out that trick.
Yeah, so as long as the NPC or the invisible NPC is in your costume selection, it'll cause that closing crash.
Well, it's not necessarily a problem because it will save. I can save it.
Yeah.
And everything, and it keeps all the data and everything. But
yeah, and I have not tested it and published it, but
yeah. Well, thank you. I learned something today. Anybody else have some bugs that they particularly dislike?
I would simply echo what Dragoon said. Don't take my costume bug away. You know what? I'll deal with it crashing my client sometimes and having to reboot my computer. I'll figure out what not to do, but man, that bug is so much.
Yeah.
It's useful and it's fun and it's the last thing in the world. Exactly.
Did I mention that I created an entire security squad in full armor? Custom.
It's like, don't take this away from me. Like, this is the one thing that, I know it's a bug, and I know that from a developer standpoint, when something is client crashing, it's gotta go. That's the kind of bug that they consider, very often, that's gotta go. We gotta get rid of that
if they would just limit it to, if they're gonna get rid of it, and I hope they don't.
See, I don't.
If they would just leave us the import option for our saved NPCs, because that works fine.
That works fine, and I hope that,
and it's incredibly useful.
I think that's an intended feature, and that if all they would have to do is turn off the button that says use the cryptic NPCs.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if the import feature is pulled from Neverwinter's Foundry, because they have that feature too, and the way it's designed to work in Neverwinter is you're supposed to pull any stock NPC and then go and edit it. And they're all built so that you can edit it like that. Unfortunately, Stowe is not built that way.
Yeah, I was going to say Stowe's NPCs are not built as editable. They're built, that's why when we get them as bridge officers, when we get a Reman, when we get a Breen, we can't do anything to them because they're not built that way. So
here's the other question that goes along with that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
The issue with the bridge officers is that they have costume options that you can't get otherwise. One example would be the comic officer who has all these glowy things surrounding him that aren't available as a costume anywhere.
Right, but there occasionally the tailor bugs out and lets you play around with their costume, and it always messes up the NPC if you do it, and it won't let you save it because those NPCs they are just not coded to be
the tailor isn't designed to edit them.
Right, the tailor is not designed to edit a Breen, so anything you change about him will never save. And that's understandable, and I'm totally okay with that. But if it had been designed from the beginning, like you're saying, Dragoon, like if it had been designed from the beginning, like Neverwinter is, we could load up a Breen and then edit the things that are editable on a Breen, and not try to use a Breen head on a Klingon or something like. It would take
a lot of back-end work to get it to that point.
Yeah, exactly. With a perfect situation, we would have no ability to access other things than what are supposed to be editable.
Yeah, but essentially they put a version of the character creator, the player character creator, into the Foundry, rather than letting us customize and edit every NPC in the game. Mm-hmm. We just were confined to the things that you could edit on player characters. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, here's the question though, is will we get an update to the Foundry player character creator when the Romulans go live?
I don't think so.
They go live? Probably not, no.
Maybe eventually.
Maybe within...
I still have some bugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we answered that question maybe eventually, so go ahead.
There are two bugs that really annoy me. One, Hippiejohn was the unlucky recipient of 3 times. And both are in my spotlight mission.
I tried to play because you were going to be on the show, Baz, and you know this. I tried to play your mission 3 times, and your spotlight mission is broken, or I broke it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've got a timer, and with the mobs it's an interior map, and the mobs in the timer in a separate room that you can never actually go to. But for some reason, one of the mobs, I can't remember which, has the power that pushes back their opponents, and somehow that causes the mob to actually go through the wall. And because they're in different rooms, sometimes there's some just headache stuff going on, and sometimes they can't actually finish killing each other, and the timer doesn't complete, and the timer is used as
of course that's your spotlight, so you can't change it anymore.
Yeah. So yes, I can't change it.
So hey, Brandon says that he makes it a point to listen to all of the podcasts every week. He finds some time. So eventually he'll be listening to this podcast, and hey, there you go. It's just as good as tweeting him, maybe.
So let Baz have his mission back real quick. He can try and fix that. And
does it use a mob that has high density beam rifle weapons?
I can't remember what the weapons. Yeah, I can't remember what weapons they use. But it's the Fed and Hippiejohn mobs, and whatever.
The Hippiejohn do the pushback, don't they?
Yeah, the Hippiejohn I think do the pushback.
So you'd want to change it to somebody who didn't have that.
So I'll probably just change it to Romulan then. Because I thought it might have been the Fed.
Of course, then you'd have some Thaleron drones wandering throughout the map.
Yeah. Well, it's either that or Riemann, or because I want to try and keep
Baz, if you do get the mission back, one thing you could do is, 10, 20 feet away from that wall, cut the room in half with an invisible wall that both groups never get past, and then they'll never be close enough to the wall of the room that the player is in to get pushed back through.
Well, I've actually tried a trick similar to that. I've put in wall assets and like put different, borders in between, and that doesn't seem to work.
Oh well.
Well, I'll tell you, because we used to have that issue where they would actually shoot through walls. They would aggro on you and shoot through solid walls. Walls that were either ones that we put down or ones that were built into the map. That used to be a huge problem. But I guess it's proof that they do fix bugs, because that one was fixed.
Yeah, now we have that wonderful way of delaying combat.
Yeah, which actually reminds me of the second bug. It's actually as well in Honor of Prophet as well, and with Invisible Walls, I've got a section where the player can either initiate combat with some of the with the base owner's security or not, depending on triggers. The invisible wall comes down or up. But if you get too close to the invisible wall and turn around to go back, your bridge officers will actually go through the wall and start the combat anyway.
I would say that's, to me, that's a big part of the pathing issue. If there were,
I don't know that it's a bug per se,
but there's an issue with pathing of bridge officers in the Foundry that doesn't exist elsewhere in the game. I mean, there have been missions that I've played where the author even takes the time to stop you and say, your bridge officers might get stuck here. Here's how you can solve that problem, et cetera, et cetera. Because there is the pathing issue in the Foundry that doesn't exist elsewhere. I've never seen it elsewhere in the game.
A lot of that issue. Actually, one that I ran into, a bug that was very specific bug, is I was trying to create missions that were holodeck programs, and I did, because we have some holodeck assets in the game, and you put it in and you tell them to fade out, and it's like the program is fading in, essentially. It's a reverse psychology kind of a thing. And then I wanted to fade the holodeck grid back in at the end of the mission. But you can't do that, because when you spawn that holodeck asset at the end of the mission, it pushes the player character out of the way rather than spawning around them.
I was running into the same problem with the transporter room.
Because the holodeck is
it's essentially like a solid object.
Yeah, it's one giant object.
It might be hollow in the middle, but it doesn't treat it that way.
Right.
I'm thinking this is new pathing code that they put in for the Foundry to basically try and deal with instances of bridge officers getting stuck. And so it's less tolerant, and it makes the assumption that things get stuck more easily.
Well, one thing that I just thought of when you were talking about that whole thing with how objects spawning around someone will usually push them out of the way. I've actually seen
not always, but usually.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Is that I know of at least one situation where they don't. Because one of my first missions, I ran into an issue with that. Is I took one of those Borg converter gizmos, and of course, the regular version, you can walk inside it, blah blah blah. Well, see, with this one though, you have to interact with the object, and after you interact with the object, it explodes. And then you have this charred, smoking hulk that used to be a converter sitting there in its place. So, I did what I thought was an amazingly cool trick because, well, let's face it, I was still learning how to use the Foundry. But you interact with the object, the first one disappears, and then, it triggers the destroyed version to pop in its place. And, of course, naturally, one thing I was like, okay, so what happens if you're standing inside the converter when you do this?
You get stuck.
Exactly.
Yeah, you get stuck.
In my mission,
reason, when that particular prop spawns, if you're standing inside the hollow area in the original undamaged converter, you will be stuck inside the destroyed version. However, if we're standing right next to it, outside it, it'll push you out of the way most of the time. Again, most of the time. There are some cases where it won't.
There was a semi-rare instance in my mission where when you pull down that switch for the first time and it stops halfway, if you were too close to the switch, you would actually get stuck in the switch halfway down because it extended out further than it originally did.
Yeah, I noticed there was a bit of I wasn't sure if you had done it or if it was part of the object, that it has sort of an invisible boundary far away from it, extending out from it, I guess.
That's why you don't get stuck. It's basically 3 invisible walls.
Oh, you did that intentionally.
Set up perpendicular, so you can actually activate it through the invisible walls.
Ah, so you've done a little workaround for that.
Yeah.
Clap, clap, clap. Wow.
Well, that's
seriously.
What we do, right? That's our thing, is workarounds.
Invisible walls, you can interact through them. That's really cool.
Basically, they're facing away from you, and so you can't interact through it, but you can interact along them. So it only works if you're standing directly in front of them. If you get off to the side, the walls will block your action.
You could also just have them interact with the invisible wall.
I could, but I want to switch to glow.
Yeah. Good point.
Well, why don't we move on? I know Hippie had some...
I will say there was one other bug I wanted to bring up.
Oh, okay.
And that was the space lighting bug.
Yes.
We have not had working space lighting for a long time. I don't know, Hippiejohn, how long ago did you play my mission?
Within the last, I've played it a few times. The first time I played it was months and months ago, and then I've played it again within the last month. So.
Okay. When you first played it, did the Midas Ray in close proximity to two suns?
I don't remember the first.
Because originally
I don't remember that part of the thing.
Originally I had it, the Midas Ray was actually sitting in very close proximity to this binary stars.
I think I noticed that.
Depending
like
on
I said, that would have been...
I might be thinking of another mission, but I think I noticed one where it's like, where it in my head I was like, oh, binary system.
Yeah. No, well, there are now two binary stars off in the background, but it used to be that I had two gas giants and I had placed the lights ever so perfectly so that they would hit these gas giants and they would just light up with the bloom. And this made them look like two really close stars. Mm-hmm. And it was a really cool effect. And I'd really like to put it back in before I submit it for spotlighting.
Right.
So I've been kind of holding off on spotlighting it until we can get this bug fixed.
All right. Hippie, I know you had a couple of topics for us.
Well, when you guys, the first one is just, because Baz is here and he started talking about a superhero and supervillain mission of, kind of, in a Star Trek universe. Earlier this week in the chat room, he asked me a question and it was, so will you create missions when they make a Foundry for Champions? And I was like, well, yeah, I completely would. And it occurs to me that it's completely not really STO related. It's more cryptic related. And I guess what it is to me is I don't understand exactly, except for the fact that it's probably a much earlier code branch and it would be really hard to work it in. I don't understand why Champions doesn't have a Foundry yet. It occurs to me that recently, I mean, that is the most ignored game in Cryptic's repertoire right now. Yeah. They get almost no support whatsoever. Every time they put out something that is new content, it is an event, and I see it panned as, oh, this is nothing more than just, a quick grab kind of thing, and the lock boxes are even more hated over there than they ever have been in
I think the vehicle thing, wasn't that like the last significant update they got?
Yeah, this is the last significant update, and that.
Yeah, the problem with Champions Online is that basically they have a lot less to work with than Stowe or Neverwinter does, because they have a lot fewer players than Stowe or Neverwinter does. I am fairly confident from everything I've been hearing devs saying that PWE kind of keeps a policy of you have to stay in the black. I mean, you can only spend what you bring in. So basically, Champions is kind of stuck in the position of they don't have a very big player base. They have enough to sustain themselves, but they don't have enough to grow at a very fast rate. Right. And right now they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, is that they can't allocate more funds to grow without more people, but they can't really draw in more people without more stuff to draw people in.
Right. The reason that I asked the question of, why don't they have a Foundry yet?
Because they don't have the dev team to do it.
They don't have the dev team to do it, obviously, right? But the idea of user-generated content in that game just really it strikes a chord with me that they're so starved.
Game, that would be so fun.
Yeah,
they're so starved for content. It just the game is so starved for content. It just strikes a chord that having a UGC tool in that game it just seems like it would be beneficial. And I know that being the kind of I have over 50,000 individual comic books in boxes that I've been collecting the things since I was 9 years old. I love the superhero genre, the supervillain genre, and the whole thing. I would completely love if they had a Foundry.
Whereas
I know they're probably not ever.
The problem with that is because there'd be a lot of people like you with 50,000 comic books in their collection who would want to do stories and use characters from those comic books, which would be bad.
They just have to have an end user license agreement. I mean, they just have to get people to do the same thing that they do, that they're doing in Neverwinter, that we've all done with the Lascaux Foundry. You just have to sign that end user license agreement, and it has to be.
I think you're absolutely right, but I think it would be more of a problem.
Policed. It would be a little bit more of a problem because their character editor allows you to make
work with though.
Yeah. But that's just that occurred to me as something to talk about because
I'll tell you there's one
user generated content is something that's really cool.
There's one bit of user generated content that is in Champions, as I understand it, because I have not gotten a player up that high to see it. That is in Champions, but is not in Stowe, that I think should be, which is the Nemesis system.
Yeah, there is. I loved getting to that point.
Yeah. Where you design your own villain for your own hero.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mean, think about how many great hero-villain relationships there are in Star Trek. Kirk and Khan. How awesome would it be to be able to design your own villain who appears random places out in the game for you to fight?
Mm-hmm.
I think we should.
That's I think it's a brilliant, it's a really great idea that's just not, from what I've been able to determine in Champions anyway, not really well implemented. I haven't seen since I created the villain, I've encountered him all of 3 times.
Yeah, I've got a couple of characters that have gone through several Nemesis cycles. And basically, you have control of what your character looks like, what his powers are. You have a limited selection of what his minions look like. Or I guess you can kind of select like pirates or ninjas or cyborgs or aliens or.
I so wish there were Nazis available in there, because my villain is Grammar.
You can also pick your Nemesis's personality. You have 3 personality types you can choose from, and these affect or flavor his dialogue. But other than that, the missions almost all play out the same. You have several. What I'll call like story missions, which are the same for all Nemesis, and then you have a number of random popcorn missions.
Mm-hmm.
Those are kind of like exploration missions are for us.
Yeah, I think
thankfully there are more than the popcorn ones. There's a number of high profile encounters that are like fully voiced, and you'll usually introduce some henchman or some high level henchman that has been hired by your Nemesis to take you down or do something for them. And these are all the same.
Cool. I'll have to continue to explore it.
And I think it would take some tweaking, but I think something like that could work for Star Trek.
Yeah, in some of CO's featured episodes, they do introduce your Nemesis through that, and there's some of the more some of the other.
Yeah, there's the occasional alerts that will feature a random Nemesis from the one of the players in it. There's also the Nemesis confrontation, which is a max level. I guess it's like an STF here, where you basically end up fighting all 5 of your the players' Nemesis and then Dr. Destroyer.
Oh well, that's kind of cool.
It is kind of cool.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
It's very cool. I mean, I love superhero stuff. And as far as user generated content goes, I think it is a very great idea to be able to design your own villain. But I don't know that unless they were willing to make like in Stowe, I don't know unless they were willing to make a story arc for, personal villain. Even if it's just, a 5-episode story arc that they randomly, pepper in every so many missions or whatever, that you get this new possible mission. That unless it were done like that, I don't know, cause how Kirk and Khan, they were a great hero villain,
Yeah, but I mean, there was only one episode and one movie involving them.
Exactly. There was only one movie and one episode.
See, it doesn't have to be a lot, it doesn't have to be a huge amount of content, but I think it adds another layer to the game and something, more things to do.
I would agree. It could, and even so, like Star Trek 2, the Khan parts of Star Trek 2, his that entire movie could probably be broken up into 3 episodes, of content of things that your hero is doing, that the villain appears throughout.
I don't know. I don't know if you could integrate them enough to.
It'd
really...
be hard. It'd be.
And I mean, even if you did pull like the Nemesis system from Champions Online, you kind of run into the problem of, despite the fact that your Nemesis looks unique and sounds like one of 3 possible characters, the plots are all the same.
Yeah.
So they all involve like
This
death
is true,
rays
and
and doomsday devices,
a whole lot,
and stealing some tech or.
Yeah. That'd be tough to get around. But
one thing that I was thinking of when he was talking about the relationship between the heroes and the villains in Star Trek is, do you remember the episode of Next Generation called Angel One?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Society?
Yeah, well
the film,
Beata was a very interesting character, and so was Ariel, because of just the situation that they were in the episode and what ended up happening in the episode, especially as is with regards to them and Riker.
Yeah. Okay, Hippie, what was your other topic?
The other one is something that I kind of want to, it would be really my final thought, because I'd like to hear what, we have some listeners, I know. I'd love to hear what everybody, we hope anyway, or else we're just doing this for nothing. I'd love to hear what everybody has to say about the Prime Directive. When you guys started talking about the Prime Directive before, thoughts about the Prime Directive really, and the way that it's been used in the various shows really started to occur to me, because it almost strikes me that the Prime Directive is a really, really nice rule. It's a really wonderfully noble sounding rule that is in practice more or less impossible to follow, because one of the things that I've always heard is simply the act of observation, even simply the act of being there and observing, changes the culture that you're observing, or changes that. So it's a really, to me, it feels like a really noble rule that in practice is nigh impossible to follow. And I think a lot of the shows the shows just many times, every single captain has done things that ignore the Directive. Every single one of them. Kirk, Picard, Cisco.
I think not everybody interprets the Prime Directive the same way.
Exactly.
For instance,
I want to hear
the question of does
like
the Prime Directive
does
the Prime Directive apply to post-warp civilizations?
To a certain extent, yes, but most of the provisions of the Prime Directive are only geared towards non-spacefaring civilizations.
Yeah, so I don't. As far as I know, we don't have the Prime Directive written down somewhere, do we? We only have examples of captains trying to or breaking execution.
Memory Alpha and Ex Astra Scientia both have rather detailed, exhaustive dissertations on what we do know about the Prime Directive, and it's a pretty complicated piece of Starfleet regulations. I mean, the names makes it sound simple, but it has a whole lot of clauses and sub-clauses and stuff that have been brought up in various episodes. And
so then, hearing how complex it is, it makes me say one thing to everybody who ever wants to write a Prime Directive story. Research the Prime Directive. Because if it's got that many layers, if it's that complex, if you're going to be writing a story about it, you should probably understand the many different layers and the complexity.
And take a look at, the times that it's been violated and look at the rationalizations that they gave and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, going back to that thing with Evil 70th Mission, the thing with that one is that the planet had already had a cultural contamination where certain members of the planet had gained access to Klingon technology and were using that to give themselves a technological advantage over the other people on the planet. And you go there because a Federation cultural observer has apparently attempted to restore the balance of power on the planet by giving access to Federation technology to certain of the other individuals who live on the planet. So, I mean,
that's a gray area there.
yeah, exactly. Because the Prime Directive, one of the subclauses that I mentioned is that the whole thing of leave them alone, let their culture develop on its own, yada, 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 doesn't apply if someone else is trying to subjugate them, like the Klingons. And if they are experimenting with the utilization of alien technology that they didn't develop themselves, and in that case got from a crashed Klingon ship, what is the Federation should the Federation do in that case? Because the Klingons didn't interfere directly, but they did interfere. It's, yeah, like you said, gray area.
So yeah,
we've only got a few minutes left, so let's ask our guest, Bazag. Do you have a quick topic for us to discuss?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly respond to some of the stuff you said in last episode. I know you said, I wish Bazag was here. I suppose a quick rule regarding incorporating your own captain. There's, I suppose, there are two rules. In your Foundry missions is one, as you said, be the driving force, the actor, the hero of the story, the player. To when you're raiding the mission, you know, your captain has to be just like every other NPC in that mission in some way. And I suppose the second thing is to depend. I mean, I've got a number of in like 3 missions where my main Bajoran tactical captain appears, and each time it's slightly different. One, it's a story focused about him. Another one, it's a story that involves him working alongside you, and a third one is basically he's just there as an enemy, because that's a Klingon mission for you to deal with. So in regards to that, you know, the more you use your captain, the less role he should have in the actual Foundry mission. More using throughout all your missions. He should be, you know, less involved. I mean, don't have too many stories focused on him. And
well, it probably depends on kind of how you view your captain, whether you roleplay a lot, whether you roleplay just in your head, you know, whether you feel like, you know, this is actually your player character in there, or if you're just using an interesting character that you happen to also have a player of.
Right.
Or whether you think that, you know, this is all the same person, this is, you know, these things in the mission are happening to your captain. You know, if people were to see you flying around, you know, running around New Romulus, and they say, oh, hey, it's that guy that was in that Foundry mission.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want them to say, hey, wait a second, I killed him. So, you know, yeah. I would probably, you know, even if you're going to use him as a villain, you know, on the opposite faction, I would say probably don't kill them. You know, don't have the player kill your player.
I would agree.
But that's, you know, that's up to you, up to the author. All right, guys. Well,
I did have one thing I wanted to discuss briefly.
Okay, real quick.
General Order 24, Starfleet General Order 24.
Which is?
I've never seen someone write a Foundry mission about that, and it's something that you know, it's only come up in the TV show twice.
Hence the question, what is Starfleet General Order 24?
We don't know the exact specifics of what it is, but what we do know of it is that it seems to be an all-out attack against a race that is, I guess you could say, a clear and present danger to the Federation, and it's more or less a declaration of all-out war. See, because when Kirk invoked it in the one episode, what he did say about it is that by invoking General Order 24, he was ordering the Enterprise to bomb the planet it was orbiting into rubble.
Okay, here's what Memory Alpha, it says, in order to destroy all life on an entire planet, order was given by Captain Garth to Captain Kirk on two occasions, given by Captain Garth in one episode and by Captain Kirk in another episode. On neither occasion the order was actually fulfilled. That's from Whom Gods Destroy and A Taste of Armageddon.
Yes, A Taste of Armageddon is the one I was talking about. It says that
I think he used it, didn't he use it more as like a threat?
He did, yeah. But,
But it's there.
Yes, exactly.
There on two occasions.
So what kind of story would you like to, what kind of story would you like to see around Starfleet General Order 24?
Well, it's just one of those things where it's just one of those things that kind of makes me think. It's like, okay, so what possible reason would the Federation have for actually doing that? What happened in A Taste of Armageddon? The people who lived on that planet were trying to kill the crew of the Enterprise. That's the reason why Kirk invoked the order. What sort
it's
of
got to
thing?
be sort of a self-defense kind of a thing, like, these people are going to destroy the Federation, like the Xindi or something, when they thought they were going to destroy the civilization. If that's the only way to stop it, it's them or us, right?
Well, I mean, it's kind of sort of like the sort of thing, like, with like the Dominion War and stuff like that, is that they never actually completely eradicated any of the planets that the Dominion had ever taken. So it's just one of the things I kind of wondered about, but again,
that could be here we go, guys. We could put together our first challenge to the community. Write an episode, something about General Order 24. Either, explaining why it's there, explaining what, a situation where you'd use it, something. And maybe we'll
if we're actually gonna make our first challenge, we should say, we should do some kind of prize. I don't even know what a good prize. I don't know what a good prize is.
One of the lockbox ships you got hoarded.
Hey, no, I'm not giving away one of my hoarded lockbox ships. I only have 2 of them.
We'll think about it for the future.
I have a very useful.
I'll throw a million EC at it. Doesn't seem like a lot to me in the economy as I see it these days, but I'll throw a million EC at it, or maybe more.
Well, we'll think about that and we'll get back to it.
We'll think about that and we'll officially
I think that
announce
would be a great topic to do, though, to see different people's takes on that.
Yeah,
I do too. I like it. I like it a lot.
One thing that especially makes me wonder is, why did Starfleet write that regulation in the first place?
Mm-hmm. That could be a mission, is
jumping off point.
Go back in time to where there was some sort of tragedy or something that caused them to want to have that.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
Those who don't understand history are doomed to repeat it. So maybe history is repeating itself, and that same situation has come up again.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, there we go. That's a great way to end the show. We're deciding that we're going to make a challenge.
Thinking about a challenge, guys. So start thinking about making that episode.
Yeah.
But for now, we will say good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.